help you?
Yeah, what happened to the school?
The school's been shut for years. Are you a parent?
Sure as hell hope not. Who are you?
I'm Hank. Hank McCoy. I look after the house now.
You're a beast? Look at you. I guess you're a late bloomer.
I don't know what you're talking about, but I'm gonna have to ask you to leave.
So where's the professor?
There's no professor here.
You're pretty strong for a scrawny kid. Come on. Sure there's not a little beast in there?
No.
Come on, beast.
He's not here.
Come on, beastie.
Hey. I said the school's closed. You need to leave.
Not until I see the professor.
There's no professor here. I told you that.
Look, kid. You and I are gonna be good friends. You just don't know it yet.
Professor?
Do you expect me to talk?
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, hello, and welcome to episode 217 of Do You Expect Us to Talk? I'm your host Becca, and as always, joined by my fellow film buffs, Chris and Dave. How are you both?
Good evening, folks.
Buffing very much, thank you.
Yeah, sorry about the delay, folks. I got married, so that's
Dave
what
is a
held
newly
us all
married
up.
buff.
So they came down here for the wedding, which was at the Carbis Bay Hotel.
We finally got to meet all
And-
three of us. Oh my gosh.
And then the following week, I was back at work, and then we sort of suddenly made a last-minute decision to go over to Romania, where she's from. So we went over to Romania for a week as well. So that's why we've been away, and then we come back, and it's just taken us a while to sort of line our schedules up. So
That sounds
sorry
like
about
Chris and
this,
I went to
fellas.
Romania with you, but we didn't. Sorry.
Yeah. I watched this particular film about. I knew there'd be a break around the wedding, but I thought we'd record probably the week after, and then we just couldn't. So I was expecting to record this about 3 weeks ago. So I watched the film about 3 weeks ago, and just over. And of course, I've had to watch it again today. So we are back. Sorry for the delay. Becca, what are we covering tonight?
Tonight we are eventually recovering. Sorry about the delay, everybody. So, yes, tonight we are doing X-Men Days of Future Past, starring Hugh Jackman, James McAvoy, Michael Fassbender, Halle Berry, Jennifer Lawrence, Nicholas Hoult, Elliot Page, Anna Paquin, Ian McKellen, Patrick Stewart, and many more, with original music by John Ottman, with a script by Simon Kinberg, Jane Goldman, story by Matthew Vaughn, directed by Bryan Singer, and released 2014.
I thought you said Jude Law then.
Oh,
said
no.
Jude. I was like...
Sorry, J-Law.
I thought
I've got
I'd
it written
I
down
thought I'd
next to the name
watched
so
the wrong
long.
film. You haven't watched The Talented Mr. Ripley by mistake, have you, Becca?
No, but I quite like to do those films. But
No, the Alfie remake.
but
that's
add it to the list.
Oh, the Alfie remake was bloody awful.
Oh, that was terrible. Oh my gosh.
It was.
I think I walked out of it.
I don't think I walked out, but it was like, I can't believe how... what's it all about? And a couple of the other lines Alfie came out with was all that film had going for it, and it was surprisingly dark in places as well.
Just when you thought he couldn't be more of a dick, he does manage to become more of a dick.
Yeah.
Isn't that the original Alfie though? In the original Alfie's has dark moments and
Yeah, it does. It does, to be fair, but it's just a
But the
better
remake
dark
takes it to
film.
another level, and it's like, oh,
Yeah, it really does. But anyway,
there's no favours.
no.
And he's made
So-
better films, so I felt a bit sorry for Jude Law. But no, sadly not appearing in this film.
Yeah, Days of Future Past then. I had very mixed feelings around this film. I was pleased to see another one with the first class crew, but I had two sort of, maybe three things holding me back on full sort of excitement about it, because although the story was by Jane Goldman, who was known to be sort of a Matthew Vaughn acolyte, the screenplay was by Simon Kinberg. And I just don't rate that guy as a writer particularly. That's not to say everything he's ever done's poor, but my hopes weren't particularly high. And it's a sign of how the times were passing that Bryan Singer coming back wasn't necessarily a positive. You know, when I think, all right, in my case, I was interested to see what he'd do with Superman, because Superman means a bit more to me than the X-Men. But purely from an X-Men perspective, it was very disappointing when he dropped out after X2. But of course, then when he comes back to do this, it's almost. Well, I mean, what had he done in the interim? Had he done Jack the Giant Slayer at this point? He'd definitely done Valkyrie, which was okay, but nowhere near as good as its pedigree should have suggested it would be. And he was a filmmaker that already sort of looked a little bit in decline, without any of the sort of salacious suggestions about his personal life. It was already clear something wasn't quite right with this guy. So I was and the other thing that was holding me back was actually, although it's one of the selling points of the film and quite a positive, probably, I almost didn't like the idea of bringing the old crew back. It just felt a bit like, it felt like an easy box office decision, as opposed to like the slightly more difficult commercial decision of stick with this new younger crew and build them a story. And then the final thing, which I'd forgotten when I went into this, was the fact that it was going to go forward, I think, 11 years. And I just, that's going to be a problem in future weeks. I didn't, in and of itself, have a problem with them setting an X-Men film in the 70s. But I just thought we were missing 11 years of that group's story for a film that was only going to be 3. So that's my background going into it anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I can't remember what going in. I reckon I would have been excited. Going in excited. I saw this. I mean, this was like the height in the midst of Marvel, and like, you know, I used to go to like midnight screenings.
Well, you could argue this is Marvel's strongest year, can't you? This is the year of
Winter Soldier.
Winter Soldier and the first Guardians of the Galaxy. So certainly,
that's true.
Certainly from the years they were releasing 2 a year, 2014 was their strongest year. You could make a case for, like, I can't remember if it's 17 or 18 now without looking. You can make a case for at least one other year, but this is probably the height of sort of phase 2 of Marvel.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's that peak of going to like midnight screenings, and I remember, and this is what I think ultimately this kind of made me realise. I watched this at a midnight screening, and I didn't enjoy it as much as I wanted to enjoy it. And I was like, oh, maybe it's just like the fact I'm just going to a midnight screening. I don't know. Made me sort of like doubt it to a degree.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of hype, a lot of buzz around it. I think I remember a lot of people enjoyed it at the time. I think, but I don't know. I've always been a bit standoffish with this one, and I will get into our first thoughts in a bit. But I'm generally lukewarm with it. I could probably take this one and leave it, I think, personally. But what first impressions are really, for first memories, I felt very kind of, it's all right, with a lot of praise coming from like the press and from like just general opinions, just sort of like lauding it. So I was kind of a bit like, it's all right. It's not.
I've had some
great.
of that with Shang-Chi in the last couple of weeks. Shang-Chi has had decent reviews. All Marvel Studios films do now, and there's no conspiracy theory in that. They're being paid off. Why would they be paying anyone off? They're making buttloads of money. But I do occasionally feel like I've watched a different film from everybody else, and Shang-Chi was very, very lower tier Marvel for me, and its third act was like far fucking too long. And but I liked it. But it was the definition of a 3-star film for me.
Yeah, Shang-Chi was fine, but
if it set the tape, we did half stars, I'd have given it 3.5. But I gave it 3 because there was no way I could give it 4.
I would say, just if you want like an honest opinion, just sort of ask yourself an honest question: are you generally excited for the next Shang-Chi film? And if I'm honest, I enjoyed Shang-Chi when it was on, but I'll be honest, I really couldn't give a shit.
It had some of the things that are in some of the better Marvel films, and it had some of the things that are in some of the weaker films. They've never done an unwatchable piece of dreck. They haven't. Even the worst Marvel films, like okay, and it's not bargain basement, but it's bottom half. There's no doubt. And yet I go on to like Facebook and I see like Tony Black saying, "Oh, it's right up there with Black Panther. It's possibly like joint best origin film."
Yeah.
And I'll always respect his opinion. I'm not raising his name to have a go at him. I'm raising his name as someone who writes in lots of different outlets about film, has recorded a lot about a film, and always has a considered opinion. And I felt a little bit about Shang-Chi, like I'd watched a different film to everyone else. Fine though it was, but it was a bit like Black Widow. Black Widow was just fine as well. I think Phase 4 has not caught fire at all yet. The most interesting thing in Phase 4 so far has been WandaVision. But...
And even that's all surface area.
Exactly. But it at least interested me that they were putting a new spin on some things, and trying something a bit different. I mean, I was really disappointed by Loki. But even then, I didn't slaughter it. I just think their output in this phase has been average, and I think maybe that's an inevitable come down after the heights they reached, and they'll build something again. They've got to build all new stars again now as well. We knew the people that were there before, but I think I'm trying to tie it back to this before we pass to Becca, that I got a little bit of that with this film. I'll go into it in a minute with my first thoughts, but I definitely had this feeling that like people had seen a different film to me. Becca?
Yeah, I sort of seem to remember being quite hyped for this back in the day. It seemed to me that it had kind of quite a lot after, First Class. It had a lot riding on it, and kind of in terms of like its emotional heft as well. And I think a lot of my friends who have seen it as well, obviously they've grown up reading the comics and everything, and kind of thought, oh, this is kind of where it all. They do have a chance to try and iron out some of the wibbly wobbly timey wimey bits, and try and close some of those gaps that have been made with the previous films. So I seem to remember, coming out of this upon really thinking, oh yeah, it was okay. Perhaps it kind of just struggled under the kind of the weight of some of its parts. Perhaps it didn't quite make those connections. And then watching it again for the show, I had similar sort of reaction to you guys. It's fine. It is what it is. It's not great, but then it's not bottom tier X-Men either. I do kind of appreciate more of like the emotional aspect of it as well. And again, you've got a lot of the returning cast as well. But no, I still enjoyed it. As I say, it was okay. It was fine. Quite lightweight review there. But yeah, we can get stuck into it as we go through it in a sequential fashion.
Well, just to give my first thoughts then, is that effectively your first thoughts as well, Becca, that it's just fine at this stage?
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, to be honest, I obviously watched this when we reviewed it a few weeks ago, but then obviously things happened, and I perhaps didn't have as much. Sadly, I've come into this film, I've got fun facts which I've scraped from the barrel of the internet, at the bottom of the barrel. But yeah, I must have
from the depths of IMDb trivia.
Well, actually, yeah, not wholly from IMDb, but other places of interwebs as well. But yeah,
Wikipedia too, Chris.
Oh yeah,
yeah, don't forget, written by people. It's prime scrapings. But yeah, I've come into this a little bit underprepared, unfortunately, because I've watched it. Saw it released and watched it a few recently. But I thought I must. Obviously, we had a few weeks gap in between, which is also partly due to my fault. But the things that kind of I wasn't in a good place and kind of ran out of time a little bit, unfortunately, as well.
I just want to say something else at the outset before I go into my opening thoughts. I'm very, apart from having slightly outrageous views sometimes, I don't ever like to offend people deliberately. So I will correctly refer to Elliot Page. But just remember, this is a female character. Elliot is playing in this film.
No, yeah, I've got Elliot Page written down, so that's okay.
If I am referring to Kitty Pryde as a female, that's what the character is. And no offence is intended, but I will correctly refer to the actor as a male and as Elliot Page.
Yep, good point.
On just for my opening thoughts, I came out disappointed with it as well. Now, time has put it into that sort of loose second category. I mean, for me, the top X-Men films are in no particular order: X2, Logan, First Class. They're the top three, and I couldn't quite. But the second sort of category has the first X-Men film in it, probably the Wolverine. And I would say this is probably at the top end of it because it's quite an ambitious film. It's got an excellent cast. It's certainly very well acted. There are some emotional moments in it, but I think it's all undone by its complete disregard for fucking continuity. Now, continuity errors are continuity errors, but we saw like Charles die, and we saw Charles die 8 years before this film came out. So even if you didn't stay to the mid credits and hear his voice, and even that's only a tease, and we don't really know what's happened. They throw him in at the end of the Wolverine, and you think, right, that's 2 years later, and he's still got his bone claws, and they find him at the airport, and it's like, well, how's he still alive, and how's he got his powers? But okay, they'll explain all this in next year's film. Next year's film is now set deep into the 2020s, when we were back in 2014, and he's got adamantium claws again. So this is going to be a problem when we get to next week. There's a tease at the end of this film that Wolverine being taken by Stryker isn't as it looks, whereas in the next film that's all like shat on. So it you know,
yeah, sort of mess around with major problems with the timeline. It's just you sort of had to take it with the pinch of salt, don't you? You think, oh, really?
You're straight into a future war scene, which is kind of distancing anyway because it's so abrupt. And then you've got like Xavier floating in on a who we don't even know where he's been, what's wrong with him, how far. Because X-Men was always the near future. That could mean anything. 2024 or whenever this film was set could actually just be a year or two after X-Men. You don't know, but it certainly doesn't look like it. So it all just feels like an opportunity. And plus, I know it's not Wolverine in the comic book who undertakes this journey, but again, it's the Wolverine show. And I felt with them going and doing like a spin-off Wolverine film and doing an early crew story, that gave you two different avenues to go down, right? So when you shove Wolverine back here in this with another lead character who most of the audience will think is dead, you're basically saying to me, you don't really care about the audience. This is just about maximizing the dollar. And that's how I feel about this film. But I think Becca hit on something very clever in saying it's less than the sum of its parts, because some of the parts in this are great. In more capable hands, this could have been a top tier X-Men film, as Tony Black, for example, thinks of this as well. And I wouldn't make fun of anyone who put this top tier, because you like what you like, but it just falls short for me, and it's because it's disjointed and it's kind of it shits on its own backstory. I like the reset at the end. I think that gave them a nice blank slate, which they immediately fucked up again. But so there
to enjoy that next time. Oh,
that was lovely at the end, just that little cameo from Kelsey Grammer and stuff. There's things I like about it, but I did come out disappointed because the story felt like it was going to be First Class, but with a ton more ambition. And what it turns out to be is a little bit of a mess, to be honest.
It has, as I say, it had a lot of ambition, but it kind of didn't, for me, this all didn't really live up to it, unfortunately. But as I say, in terms of like the plot and story, but in terms of like visuals, action, spectacle, top of the board, definitely, top of the class even.
Yeah, and I must just add, when I say it's a mess, I'm still saying it's like top of that middle banding of like X-Men films. I didn't have a bad time with it, but I'm saying that like in 2 films' time we get Logan. Last week we got the Wolverine, which had problems, but I enjoyed. But the crew, this team, the McAvoy and Fassbender took their bow with First Class, which is arguably one of the best X-Men films, and I think
that was great.
It's certainly taken at least half a step backwards here. Chris,
Fassbender alone was fantastic.
What do you think, Chris?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of agree with what you said. I think it's very well made. There's a definite quality to it for sure. The First Class cast are really great. I think actually what does let it down is the idea of bringing both the new and the old together. And while that was exciting at the time, because I reckon I was probably excited for it. I can't help but thinking, what this film ultimately boils down to is just a bunch of fan service. It felt like
they've lost their nerve. The studio has lost its nerve here.
And I can understand why there was a lot of hype and a lot of excitement, and why a lot of people did enjoy it. But I don't mean to sound degrading to the people who generally do enjoy it, but it's almost like a kid with his toys banging together, like kind of like getting overexcited. Like when you think about like whatever meme or it is about, some sort of geek just sort of jizzing over whatever, like, you know, the fantasies, like, oh my god, we've got like the new cast and the old cast and they all get together for one film. Oh my god, and it's like, oh yeah, but the result isn't particularly great, is it? You know what I mean? It's like just because you get excited by prospect or something doesn't mean it's actually a good idea. And I think that's basically what's happening here. Is they've jumped the gun too much on like, oh, we've got the old cast and we've got the new cast. Let's get them together for one big film and let's do Days of Future Past, which was quite a lauded graphic novel of the X-Men.
Yeah, and it's quite a lyrical title as well. Days of Future Past flows very well. When it was first announced, I was like, that's a really cool idea.
Yeah, and yeah, and yeah, it has some good sequences, and it does have some plot issues that I just think, what the fuck were you thinking? We'll get to that.
Yeah.
Particularly, as Charles can walk again. I mean,
that pisses me off.
I mean, again, that speaks to your continuity, though, Dave, because it's like, because they're like, well, we can't really have Charles in a wheelchair. So
what you're saying is there was a
we need to find a reason.
70s.
Yes.
Effectively, but it's just a vaccine you have to keep taking. It alleviates the symptoms. It's not a cure in the same way as it was in like The Last Stand, but at the same time they're reacting in The Last Stand like, Jesus, what a breakthrough, when there's been over 3 decades of them being able to suppress their symptoms if they want.
But it's not that. It's like, hang on, you've just called, like, you just effectively called people who are handicapped. Like, I mean, yeah, sure, there'll be mutants who like lose their powers for it, but I'm sure there'll be like non-mutants who are paraplegic, who are in wheelchairs, who'd be like, I'll inject myself every day to walk, please. Yeah, surely.
I mean, this is a medical breakthrough. Block he had. He was shot in the spine. We saw it.
This is a medical breakthrough. I mean, even if like it works like for 20% of the people, it's still a medical breakthrough.
I would understand it if his mutation over time caused him to lose his legs somehow.
Yeah.
Use of his legs. I wouldn't accept the explanation being somehow. I'd need to know whatever fig leaf of an explanation they'd give that. But we know he was shot in the back. We saw it happen. But all you got to do is take this thing and you can walk just fine.
Mm. But then the last film, that's kind of last film's fault, because as I said, they kind of rushed. It's like, we didn't need to see how he lost use of his legs at that point, because we've gone way far past that. It could be any old reason. You don't have to explain it. From now on,
they're going to be obsessed with jumping forward like 10 years at a time. But yeah. it becomes a real problem next week, and it becomes actually quite laughable by the last one, because you got characters in it who are meant to be like, well, it depends. But certainly by the last one, you'd expect Fassbender to be 60-something. Mm. And he still looks like, Fassbender, who's around my age.
They've not even put greys in his hair.
No, so I just think that this is the start of them getting lazy again, and it's no surprise to me that we've only really got one really good X-Men film after this. I have problems with that film, by the way, but it is pretty universally lauded, and I'm going to be kind to Logan for the most part. Chris and I talked about it 2 or 3 years, or 4 years ago now, when we did a summer review, and we both had big problems with the final act of that film. But we were very kind to it and its ambition and so on. Even that shits on continuity, because there's a character in that who's something else entirely in the previous year's film and so on. But we've only got one great one left, and it comes from James Mangold. It doesn't come from this sort of little Bryan Singer sort of clique and production, Mm. I think this is the start of this is confirmation that Bryan Singer is never again going to reach the sort of standards he hit with like The Usual Suspects and even X2.
I can feel some listeners going like shocked, like, "Oh my god, how are you not praising?" So apologies, listeners.
I think but I don't think it's a bad film.
It's not. I mean, and that's the weird thing, because there is definite quality in it, but it's like Becca. It's like Becca said, and Becca's been apologetic for not remembering much of how she feels straight away. But if I'm honest,
I don't
It
think
was
we're
a
going to
long time
say
ago.
Yeah,
It
well,
was
no,
nearly 10 years ago.
but that's my point, Becca. It's like I don't think that's you. I mean, I kind of I felt that way. I probably feel that way straight after watching it.
I watched it this morning and it wasn't going. To be fair, I'd seen it.
It is Sunday.
I wasn't going to watch it properly again, but I was going to stick it on, and I might be doing a few other things as well. And it just let it wash over me. If I said to you now, and I'm not going to, don't worry. If I said, right, we're not going to do this film, we're going to do a review of The Dark Knight now, I bet we could still talk about it. We could do it. We could do it, though. We wouldn't be a million miles off, particularly as you've got the odd prompt on your screen, like, you know, a synopsis or whatever, but you could talk about it in an informed way. This film just, like, fades. It does. But there's nothing in it offensive like what we're going to come to. There's just a bit of a lack of care in places, and individual parts are great, but overall it starts off with a war scene I don't care about. Patrick Stewart, who's supposed to be dead, wheeling in. Never any attempt to explain anything. Last time we saw Logan, he had bone claws. Now he has adamantium claws. It's like, what? So he's put himself through that terrible experimentation again, has he?
Yeah, kind of plays fast and loose with the timeline. But again, that's I think that's kind of obviously you can't have the same director running all the way through. But that's kind of what you get with different teams.
It's creative differences, Becca, though, because I remember Mangold saying something, or it may have been Jackman. One of the two of them said at the end of the Wolverine, when they were promoting it, they said those bone claws aren't going anywhere. You know, don't expect to just go back to adamantium next film adamantium. So there's clearly a little bit of a fight going on at the centre of Fox over the direction of this series, and I think effectively the suits have won.
Yeah, it does become a little bit like by committee towards the end, but I think next week is apocalyptic to say the least.
Oh, terrible.
We'll get there.
Well, I mean, like, it's kind of like how what me, Dave, was saying about Shang-Chi. It's like, well, yeah, it's decent enough, and people seem to have enjoyed it, but is anyone generally excited or remember that much about it?
Everyone quite liked the film.
just leaping forward.
I've already rated it to 4 stars.
Apocalypse?
No, Shang-Chi.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
Oh God, no.
No, that's fair enough.
Well,
that's fair enough.
I'll tell you this much. Like, I was watching this when I initially watched this at home, like a week or so ago. Nick, my partner, came downstairs and she like watched the last half, and she's like, I'm in a mood for watching Apocalypse now. So we watched Apocalypse, and I'll be honest, this might sound sacrilege to everyone here, but I enjoyed that a lot better than my watching of this. You know,
well, to be fair, I've seen
Fair
Apocalypse.
enough,
I've seen Apocalypse once. You know, I need to watch it again. I'm very good at watching things with an open mind. So if I'm giving you any opinion on Apocalypse now, not Apocalypse now, on Apocalypse at the moment,
When we do all the war movies, we'll cover it.
yeah, I would say that it is subject to change in the next week, because I'd have to watch things with an open mind. But there was a shot at the end of this film. There's a teaser for the next film, and there's basically Oscar Isaac's character, but in its previous body. And there are the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse sat across from him doing nothing, and I thought that's exactly what they're going to do in next week's film, because he gets some mutants to just stand around him and do fuck all.
Looks stylish.
But there you go, we'll come to that next week. But this is let's get this straight. If you go back and listen to my review of X-Men, or go back and listen to my review of the Wolverine, I put this film in the same general area quality-wise. The reason it annoys me more is the Wolverine was a spin-off anyway. You know, the first X-Men was the first go-round at it, but this is following, you know, First Class in the main series, and I just think First Class is just a better made film from let's be honest, a better filmmaker at this stage. You know, Bryan Singer had the biggest high with the Usual Suspects. The Usual Suspects in his career, I mean. That guy should have had a very, very special career. Well, time and distance from it has proven he really doesn't. You know, and the man, for various reasons we've been into before, will not get work anymore, and so his goodbye will be being fired from Bohemian Rhapsody, which was an extremely average film in itself. Just with an absolutely extraordinary performance at the centre of it. So it is a step back, and I think, and I was disappointed because Matthew Vaughn went off to do Kingsman, and of course, before a new IP comes out, you've never heard of it, have you? So you're like, oh, he's going to go off and do some shit I've never heard of. Oh, all right. And then Kingsman came out, and I'm like,
actually, it's massive.
I was like, yeah, I'm all right with that.
Now 3 films later.
Didn't like the sequel much, but I like the first one. Anyway, shall we discuss this film sequentially?
Yes. So we begin with typical X-Men fashion, with Patrick Stewart monologuing over
And then I rode off on
over cutscenes of Terminator Genisys, which is amazing, seeing as it's
a year before.
I haven't been shot yet.
Yeah, no, they would have been shooting it around the time this was released.
I'm not sure on the dates, but
I think Genisys was 2015, I think, and this was 2014. But yeah,
it's around that sort of time, the same sort of time, isn't it? I think
it was the least interesting voiceover he's done, though. The ones he did, because I can't remember it. I'm looking at it on the synopsis now, and I actually don't really remember it. Do you?
Well, no, it's just the usual,
it's become a bit of a sort of cliche almost at this point, hasn't it? It's
Yeah.
a well-known sort of trope of the
like
series.
everything is lost,
All is lost. Blah 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 blah.
So
blah.
the Sentinels were there to kill, were created by humans to hunt and kill mutants. That's going to be the story of this film, really.
Also, considering this film is set in like 2023, it's meant to be happening in the next couple of years. So start watching the skies, people.
Well, to be
or
fair,
not, as the case may be.
to be fair, we already had like Terminator last year.
That's true.
The newest one. They didn't foresee the pandemic though.
No, they didn't.
So we go straight into, and I think this is one of my problems with the film. I think early scenes in films are very important to me in drawing me in. It sounds so obvious, but if you don't grab me early, that's not always a problem. I've got pretty good concentration, but if I form a little bit of a detachment from a film early, that can be a problem, and I did here. Because we go straight into this war scene with like mutants we recognise from the original series. I think we see Bobby Drake. We certainly see Kitty Pryde. We see Storm and so on. But with no context, I couldn't care less.
Well, they're kind of fighting the Sentinels by running away, essentially.
Yeah. Which is very exciting.
And Kitty Pryde's got this new ability to transport people, not physically into the past, but their minds into their former selves.
Yeah.
So it's like transporting to you back to when you.
And
were
it will be a waste of Elliot Page here, because they have to spend the whole film just looking a bit physically under stress while they put their hands right next to Wolverine's head. But
yeah. I mean, again, I think this is what I mean by it. It feels very much fan servicey, and it feels almost like I think this part of the film lacks a certain quality. I mean, there is effort in the fight sequences. I mean, they're all like using their powers together creatively.
Yeah, and you've got these little sort of portals. They work well. We've seen them in other films, but yeah. But they're about to be wiped out by the Sentinels.
Yes.
We've got no context for where this is. I mean, you assume Earth, obviously. But I mean, is this post-apocalyptic, or is it just the building they're in? I'm not really completely sure.
But again, like, she's got this new ability to do that. It's like, well, that's never explained. It's just like, she can do that. Okay.
She has the gift of, she has the mutant power of exposition. Really.
Of plot point, and
so yeah, to be honest, the whole point of this sequence is to set up that power, because we see her apply it to a different mutant, and he loses consciousness, and the Sentinels are winning, but at some point they kind of she's done something with this character in the past to stop this event happening, and all of the damage just disappears, and you've got a deserted building. I don't know what to think about it. I feel distanced from it, but I can imagine people would watch this, spot characters they know, and say, well, I'm intrigued. I wonder how did they get to this? What is it she's just done?
Well, we instantly get Patrick Stewart.
This just felt... I hope I don't use this word too... I hope I concentrate enough not to use this word too many more times, but this just feels abrupt to me. This is just abrupt. It's just suddenly, all right, there's our original crew, just dumped right in the middle of this film. We don't know how they're there. We saw them pick up Wolverine last year at the airport. Now, you shouldn't have to have seen that film to see this, but if you're going to tease something like that, then there should be some kind of link, surely.
Yeah.
Did they just take him dinner and dancing for 10 years and then, I don't know.
Well, like the end of the world's happening and blah-de-blah, and and it a lot of it is explaining like, right, well, what are we going to do? You know, we're like this is our last stand, so to speak. We know the exact point on which this all happened, which was essentially Raven / Mystique shoots
Bolivar Trask.
Yes.
Who was a fairly sizable black guy in the first couple of films. Wasn't he black? I can't remember. He was certainly a regular size.
Played by Bill Duke.
Oh, Bill Duke. I know Bill Duke. Yeah, I remember now. Yeah.
There's been a bit of recasting, hasn't there? I think in the interim.
Every time they do something like that, I mean, it's one thing to take Edward Norton and go, we haven't got him anymore. Mark Ruffalo, they don't really look alike, but they are men of a certain age and similar build, same ethnicity, all that sort of thing. And even if they weren't exactly the same ethnicity, I'd probably overlook that without any great problems. But this just screams disregard for the audience. And once again, what's the biggest TV show in the world at the point where they're casting this? And again, it's just like, let's just get a star name in, because he was sort of the breakout star of that show. Because we're talking of Game of Thrones, of course, where he really his fame really went to another level. But anyway, we are where we are, and we're given the impression that Kitty Pryde's ability to do this with this Bishop guy is just stalling things. They need to do something a bit more profound. And Xavier wants to go back, send his own consciousness back to when the Sentinels were first launched, and that is in 1973. And as Chris just said, that's the year Mystique, who's a complete renegade at this point, assassinates Bolivar Trask. But instead of stopping the Sentinel program, it basically speeds it up because they now see mutants as a threat.
Yeah. Again, in the previous X-Men films, no mention of Sentinels.
I think they're in the sort of danger room at the start of X3 in the simulation. Yeah. They're fighting Sentinels, But
you think there would be a bigger point, though, wouldn't you?
I'll use it for the last word. Abrupt. Everything about this film is abrupt.
It is a bit, yeah.
But all right, we are where we are now. This is the plot we're going to be given. And the sort of exposition bollocks to explain why it has to be the more marketable Hugh Jackman that goes back in time is
the body can't
that
take
Xavier's not physically strong enough to take Kitty Pryde's power. So Wolverine
has to convince them, has to go back in time and not only find them but also convince them. And I do love this. Is like pure exposition, but it's just like, you know, I was a very different man back then, and Magneto is like, you must unite us where we could never be further apart. It's like it's like red on the back of the DVD box, isn't it?
It's written for a trailer.
Yeah.
Whenever I think of trailer dialogue, my mind always goes first to Die Another Day when M says to Miranda Frost, "What do you know about James Bond?" And then she just spills out exposition to be intercut with action in a trailer if they so decide to do that. I don't know whether they ever did. I've seen trailers for that film, but I can't remember if they used to.
But yeah, that's pretty much what happens.
And I just think that's a bit of that. But again, I don't want to pick on it too badly. They're setting up the story. We've got to... The other thing is character development is just thrown away. We get it with Wolverine in some of these films, particularly next week, where he's just absolutely wild again. But Charles went on a journey in the first film. At the start of that film, he was a bit of a womanizer, a bit lacking in seriousness, and he discovered a purpose, and it was that school. And now we've got a disused school and him walking around with as an allegory for a drug addict.
With a chip on his shoulder.
And a massive chip on his shoulder. And it was like, you were quite well adjusted before. And I know stuff's happened in between as people have died. I know that's all in the plot. But it is just a little bit of a retcon to get around the fact that they want to undo all the character development in order to do it again. Because they probably, as much as I like First Class, they probably did do too much in First Class. He was too far on at the end of that film. So Wolverine is going to be sent into the past, where he finds he's been
where they're like, where they go, oh well, where are you, Magneto? Oh, you'll see.
If they were genuine, if they had no like, if they were actually saying what the studio were thinking, Xavier would volunteer to go back, and Hugh Jackman would say, "No, I'm far more marketable than you, and I'll go back and show my bum."
Yeah.
Which is effectively what happens immediately. He's still in the shape he was in for the Wolverine. I think they shot them pretty much back to back.
And I always think of Alan Partridge when he talks about Bond in this, where it's like when he goes back to present, he wakes up and of course he's with a lady.
He's necking with her, you know. I can't remember. I think the episode is called Never Say Alan Again. It's from series 2 of I'm Alan Partridge. If you go and look that up and see if you can just find the clip of him describing The Spy Who Loved Me and acting out the pre-title. We've mentioned it loads of times before, but not everyone's from this country who listens, and not everyone who even is from this country will have seen I'm Alan Partridge.
I'm sure
and
on YouTube.
Rather than watch 12 episodes of it, just go and look up that episode. So he's now back in bed with a lady. Three guys burst in as he's getting dressed, but not before
shagging the mob boss's wife. Or
but he doesn't remember. It's someone he shagged years ago. And bear in mind, he had the silver bullet after this in real time, so he probably doesn't even remember this woman at all. He does have bone claws in the past, obviously, because he hasn't had the treatments, which were late 70s, if you remember X-Men Origins Wolverine. And it's just a little quick action sequence where he sort of takes on these mob bosses and sort of steals their car.
Yeah, he kind of stabs him with his bone claws. So this is basically what they meant by, oh no, the bone claws are staying, as in like we're going to go back to.
Yeah, but we meant in real time, you pillocks, not show us it before he had them.
It's like, no, we're just going to tease that, and then.
It's not, well, I've got to be careful not to be a hypocrite here, because I have said just because something's not explained explicitly, it doesn't necessarily mean it's a plot hole. We don't always have to be told everything. But when you're actually saying in publicity, oh yeah, the bone claws are staying, that there's permanent consequences from his story in this film. And he's picked up at an airport in what we presume to be present day or close to, and then it's like, we need you now, and the next year he's adamantium claws in 10 years in the future. It's like, well, and Bolivar Trask is like a little person. That's like, okay, you don't give a shit about your audience, do you? So I think next we're introduced to Bolivar Trask, aren't we?
Yeah, so this is basically where he sort of pitches his plan, really. So it's that I'm Bolivar Trask, and this is my vision.
Yeah, I mean, it's inelegant storytelling, but it's efficient enough. It's like, this is setting up the main plot of the film.
Yeah.
The mutants are a threat. The committee don't agree. That tension I don't mind. The idea that tension has been there for like decades. I mean, X-Men was sort of painted almost like it was a new thing, but okay. maybe there is that tension there, and it might depend what politicians are in the ascendant. It might depend what party's in power. Might depend who's in Congress. It might depend who's president. You can imagine that over time the balance of power between they're a threat, we can coexist with them, will shift and shift again and shift again. And we're at a stage where Trask is almost trying to convince them mutants are threats in the same way as the Senator in the first film. Although the Senator is very successful in that. What then? They're not funding it, are they? They're not funding it.
No, they kind of like, they're like, no, at this point in time. And then we have Mystique going in and relieving some of the mutant soldiers who are being used. Now,
earlier this summer, out came The Amazing Spider-Man 2, which we have reviewed on an earlier show, folks, if you haven't heard it. And I heard there was a post-title sequence. So I waited to the end, ready for my tease for the next world-beating installment in the Andrew Garfield trilogy. And it was this scene. There was some deal done to do with moving dates. I think they were going to clash originally, and Fox said, we'll shift, but you're going to stick a trailer for effectively a scene from our film at the end of yours. So I'd already seen this scene, and it is basically William Stryker trying to take a group of mutants. Who's the actor? I recognise the actor. Who's playing Stryker in this film?
Isn't it? It looks like it. I'm going to look it up because I could be wrong, but it looks like it's. It
looks like a Dylan. I don't think it is, but it looks like a Dylan, like Matt Dillon, Kevin Dillon. It looks like one of them.
No, I think it might be Quaid.
Hang on. Josh Hellman.
No, completely wrong then.
You're thinking of Dennis Quaid in Thingy's son, Jack Quaid, yeah.
Yeah.
He was in Fury Road, which is funny because he looks a touch like Nicholas Hoult, who was also in it, I think. He was in Jack Reacher. He's in Apocalypse next week. I've got a feeling I've seen him in other things as well. It may just be I've seen him in X-Men films a few times now. He was in Home and Away. So I don't know if that means he's Australian or what. He played a character called Jeb in Jack Reacher, but I don't remember that character. Is he one of the guys at the bar Jack Reacher beats up in the street? He is, isn't he? He is. Yeah, he is. Okay. And he's done a mixture of things, including TV and TV films. So he's not wildly successful, but he's perfectly good in this. Yeah. Okay. So this sequence is basically Mystique trying to stop him taking these mutants. So it turns up as an officer and then turns out to be Mystique, takes them all out, doesn't get to kill Stryker, but Havoc is there. Havoc, I believe, is it the brother or the father? I think it's the brother of Scott Summers, Havoc. Yeah. He's going to be 37, the character, in next week's film, but there you go, and look about 22. So the mutants are safe, and Mystique walks away, and that's the little sort of thing we got at the end of the Spider-Man film.
We see Toad as well.
It won't be Ray Park, though, will it?
No.
Okay.
I mean, why they brought back Toad, I don't know. It's just
Toad wasn't that interesting a character. He's one of the missteps of that first film, I thought. But whatever. You're just seeing its mutants, and you're starting to build the world we know. So I don't really mind. But now we get to Logan, go into the Xavier mansion, which is in not external disrepair, but it needs a bit of TLC. It's almost like the place has been shut for years, and it's just basically Hank and Xavier living there. That's it. It's no longer a school. Hank doesn't want to let him in at all, and basically starts punching him. I don't know if he's just trying to get him to transform or not. I'm not quite sure what his goal in this sequence is, because there's no reason for him to transform.
I think it's quite a funny scene. I wonder if he is trying to provoke a reaction and trying to get him to transform, I guess. That's what I
just thought he was trying to put him out of commission long enough to go and find Xavier, but it does play like "Come on, turn for me."
Yeah, come on, Tambly.
But he does, and there's, he's again a much more feral beast than the Kelsey Grammer version. He's
I quite like his version of Beast though, because he's very much, because like his character is meant to be kind of like a sort of, let's say, mild-mannered, kind of almost like scientist, very academic as well, and
it would definitely be a take on a Bruce Banner, wouldn't it?
Yeah, definitely took the words right out of my mouth there for sure. Or in terms of Bruce Banner or like Jekyll and Hyde, but like both at the extremes. Obviously, not a mad scientist sort of thing. But he's
although he doesn't have the same mindless element. I mean, he's
no, of course not.
It's not as mindless as like the Savage Hulk or anything.
No.
But what we get to basically, Xavier is now walking. He looks quite dishevelled. He's walking around in like a dressing gown, a robe. He's drinking, and Hank's just trying to look after him. But they take this drug intravenously to hold back the symptoms of their mutation. Hank just takes a little bit of it, but he says to Wolverine that the professor's taken a lot of it. Quite why, I don't know. Whether it comes with a high or he's that desperate to know it's going to work, I don't know. But it's a serum to control mutation. And I don't see the point of this as a story, as a plot point at all.
Yeah, I mean, it's just dumb when you think about it. It's like, well, okay, you have Xavier already in a wheelchair. Just accept it and move on. I mean, unless you like retcon it and say like, well, I'm able to walk, but it means I'm limping. After I can only manage it so much, or something like I've managed to get better over the years, or eventually this injury will paralyze me, or something.
I have been told that eventually I will be paralyzed again. Yes. I don't know why they're bringing this up. I mean, he could be. I don't know. I don't really see the point. But okay, we'll go along with it. We've got Charles is a bit of a broken man. It's just dumb
because I think when in fact the idea. I mean, it's just a hard thing to take, and I know it's like. It's a Marvel movie that has like mutants with superpowers and whatnot, but you have a guy who can cure himself of his ability to walk. It's just like.
But it's both sides of it, isn't it? I've always focused on the fact that, hang on a minute, they can cure mutation years before that, and you've rightly said, well, what about non-mutants? They can cure paralysis, for goodness' sake.
Right. He's literally on a miracle cure here, so he could like. Make himself like an absolute. Well, he's probably always a wealthy guy anyway. But do you know what I mean? If he's so devoted to, like, the greater good, surely that'd be one of the things he'd be doing.
Yeah, absolutely.
By the way, here's this thing I found. Yeah.
So it's all about him trying to convince. Because bear in mind, apart from the brief cameo in First Class, Charles really hasn't met Wolverine here. He was just a guy in a bar 11 years before, briefly. So it's likely he wouldn't even remember him. So he's now got to convince himself that he knows him, that he's from the future, and that they need some help. And he kind of leverages the whole sort of Mystique thing for it, because that's the thing Charles feels most guilty about. I suppose that's the biggest argument for having him a bit broken, but actually you just cut a quarter of an hour off the film and don't bother with this bollocks, but fair enough.
Yeah, because you wouldn't have to convince him. He'd just say, oh, fine, just read my mind, and he will. He'd be like, oh, right, yeah, well.
Yeah. So, and that is over-explained, right? You get straight away that when he can walk, his mind can't read others, and he's not tortured by constantly hearing mutants. That was never painted as something that tortured him, but okay. He explains more than once in the film that when this comes back, pointing it as a head, these go, or vice versa. When this goes, this comes back. It's like, we got it the first time we saw you. But he's able to convince him, and he's told him stuff about himself, and he's convinced him of who he is. And they need Magneto at this point. And Magneto is in a prison basically under the Pentagon, because he killed John F. Kennedy.
Supposedly.
Which he later explained. Thing is, though, the whole thing with that magic bullet thing is it assumes they were all sat a certain way in the car. They weren't. They were all leading in different directions. The bullet went in a perfectly straight line. But anyway, just read up on the case. It is a total myth that bullet changed direction. But anyway, for this story, they're building into that, and he said he was trying to save him because he was a mutant. Whatever. Mystique is meanwhile going to Trask's office to basically find out what Trask is up to, and finds that
he's been experimenting on other mutants. So we see
he has, and he's going to be meeting with the Vietnamese government. I'm assuming that's funding. So next we get to the superior of the two Quicksilvers we've talked about on this show.
Yeah, and then this is one thing that people weren't expecting. Actually, people were expecting Marvel to do a better job of Quicksilver because when the first appearance of him, people were like, oh my god, his hair's really bad. It looks like he's wearing a wig.
He doesn't look great, but there was like a lot of fun in the scene. So we were like, well, if they've done that this well with its faults, Marvel will fucking storm this, and they really didn't. I don't get that emotionally invested in the Marvel films by and large, except perhaps Endgame, and certainly the Winter Soldier where he visits Peggy. There are times I got emotional, but not that often. But I must say, when Pietro was shot in Age of Ultron, I was like, oh, good, he's out the fucking way. So it is the same skill set. Now, in the original books, this is the son of Magneto. If you think about it for too long, it doesn't work on the ages here. It's hinted at, well, it's more than hinted at in a future film, not really here so much.
It's confusing because you've got the two different studios and you've got various different actors, haven't you? So it is a little bit like,
I love what they do in the next film. We'll get to it.
Yeah, that'll be good. Some discussion.
Do you mean his sequence in the next film?
I know. I mean the fact that they hint about him being who his father is.
Yeah.
They set up and then do absolutely nothing with it. It's great. Absolutely great.
Yeah, absolutely nothing. And this guy don't age either. He's like a moody teenager here, which would put him as being born probably in the early 50s, which is possibly feasible for that Magneto. On age, he would have had to be very young. You would have had to have him at like 16 or 17 maybe, but that's possible. People do become parents at that age. But as it goes on and neither of them age, it just looks fucking ridiculous. He's still a moody teenager in the fucking 90s. But anyway, so they
have to break into the Pentagon, don't they? And this is someone who Wolverine knows. How
we don't know, but he does.
Yeah, so obviously he knows him before this date, but obviously knows he's around. Knows and
he's super fast, and he can get him to do stuff because they know the sort of thing he's been up to, and he's stolen stuff and all the rest of it because he's so quick. I mean, when we first see him, he's playing table tennis against himself. And he's a very flippant character, too much of him. What I like about this film and the next one in terms of this character is that less is more. You don't want this character in every bloody scene, and he's not. They use him in a few scenes, but he's mainly one sort of set piece.
Yeah.
And that's the set piece we're about to get, which is him sort of breaking Magneto out of prison, a very heavily guarded prison, through a kitchen and God knows what else. And the only nitpick I've got is he's moving at super speed but listening to music at normal speed. That doesn't make sense. But anyway, it's a fun sequence though, isn't it? What do you think, Becca?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's probably one of the best. Well, for me, one of the best sequences in the film for sure. Great fun. I think this is probably one of the. I don't know. I think I probably prefer this iteration. It is like perennially a moody teenager, but yeah, I think it's pretty cool. It's probably one of my sort of favourite iterations of the character. Sorry.
Well, it's better than the very, very bland Eastern European we got in the Marvel universe. I mean, it's not that he's Eastern European, that's not a problem, but it just doesn't. The guy came off as quite bland.
Yeah, I think it's because we didn't, obviously because oh god, Wanda, I can't remember her name there for a minute. Scarlet Witch is probably the focus is going to be more on her. And then obviously over in Fox Universe we kind of get the more focus on Quicksilver. But I think at the time, like, the focus was on her. We didn't know too much about him. And I think it's good, like in this studio, we kind of find out more about him really, and what he can do, what purpose he can serve. That's not. Oh god, I'm terrible with remembering. Is it Aaron Taylor Johnson?
This is Aaron Taylor Johnson, Kick-Ass, yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Sorry,
Kick-Ass
the
connection.
next one is, sorry, this isn't.
That was it. But yeah, I think it's. I mean, he still gives a memorable performance. I quite rate him as an actor, and he's pretty good. And whatever he does, I think he's really given like a tough performance. It's just the fact that he didn't really have much to do. But yeah, the scene, sorry, in this film, it's pretty memorable, I think, for me.
Yeah, it's good fun. I think it was one of the things I quite liked the sequence in Apocalypse, but it did feel like a total redo, just in a very slightly different environment, and that made the film look a bit lazy. It's like, oh, time for him to do that again. Then all right. Where do we go to after this? So now they're all out of prison, or they're all together. Hank, Charles, Eric, and Wolverine are on a plane now to go to Paris to stop this assassination. And we do have Fassbender's best scene in the film, where he's basically saying, you were. When Charles says, you took, all these people from me, and he's like, well, where were you? They were taken on, experimented, and killed. And that's obviously the implication that was Trask. And the plane nearly crashes before he calms down. At the same time, Mystique is sort of seducing a guy from the Vietnamese military so she can impersonate him and go get to Trask in the first place. Although Trask has, on the day, we find out, a tracker for mutants anyway, so he's aware. This is where we find out he didn't kill JFK. He was trying to save him. I don't give a fuck about that. And then they play chess because they're contractually obliged to play chess every time they're together.
But yeah, it has to happen, doesn't it, really?
I think it's because they're both supposed to be sort of posh British gentlemen. I mean,
well, it's just they're always kind of locked in some kind of battle, be it chess or otherwise.
It's a shortcut for I'm an intellectual. They don't sit down and play.
It is, yeah, pretty much. They're not going to sit there playing like Guess Who, are they?
They don't sit there and play Rummy, do they?
He's like my Battleship or some other.
Buckaroo.
Yeah,
Buckaroo.
I would love that.
Operation.
I think Buckaroo should be in every high stakes film, to be honest.
Just do a parody where they're playing like Buckaroo.
It's tense. It could go up any time.
Well, it could. He could buck that crap off himself and mess things up considerably.
So we get to the sort of conference day, and he's still trying to convince them of the threat posed by mutants. He's trying to get funding, basically. He demonstrates how the robots don't have any metal, so Magneto can't do anything, and no new mutant can. And then he describes that they can distinguish mutants from non-mutants, and he's got like a detector. He detects Mystique, and then of course that all kicks off. But before the sort of shooting that would take place in the original timeline, the guys turn up to try to stop her.
And so Magneto, they do, and then Magneto decides to kill Mystique for the greater good.
Yeah, and this is where I start. I quite like this bit, everything in that room, because we've had flashbacks to it, so it feels like you're watching history being made live, and I quite like that. And I do like the bit that's coming where he moves the stadium, but only as a concept. Everything else from now on, I start to lose a bit of interest.
Well, I mean, I think this is one of the problems is it's kind of like, well, what was the point? You kind of got you just freed Magneto, got him to join you, and already he's like going off script and doing his own thing. So I get it from his perspective, but from a story narrative point of view, it's like, well, what kind of was the point?
it's also the fact that they then intercut it with Logan struggling to keep the connection from the present or from the future, the present day in film terms. And I just think, like, well, that's busy work. We know that will sort itself out. Now, you could say that about any action sequence, couldn't you? Oh, we know the good guy's going to win. What's the point? Of course, a lot of these things are busy work, but it just felt like padding. And then we've got this whole bit where the president's going to come. There's a fight between Magneto and Beast, which is pretty decent. That's all right. Particularly as the shock of the crowd when they're seeing two full-on mutants going at it fighting. That's pretty cool, and it's intercut with a bit of home footage. That's like some of Bryan Singer's best work in the film. But then we're going to have this president's speech, and Raven is now going to shoot Trask, out there instead, and they're trying to identify her. And at the same time, Magneto's, being the militant mutant he is going to drop a football stadium on it. And I don't care at this point. And I don't know if it's because I don't know which iteration of these people we're supposed to be most interested in. Is this, are we supposed to care about present day Wolverine, this Wolverine? You know what I mean? It's all a bit, this is busy work now, and it's like, will she shoot the president? Probably not, because had she done, she'd have been killed very quickly, and we know Mystique is very unlikely to die here. And of course, how do we get the sort of Sentinels going off now?
So Magneto tracks them down on a train and somehow fuses gets control of puts metal inside them so he can control them, and somehow that manages to operate all their
command systems. It doesn't make sense. All right, fair enough, but he gets control of them. He's trying to stop. What have we got then? Trask has got a blood sample of her now, haven't they?
Yeah. Which is one of the key things that they need for the Sentinels, because they can.
Because then they can take on mutations and stuff like that, and copy and so on. Into small So airport, we've got Charles trying to talk to Mystique through different people, which is quite a nice sequence. I like that. It's what I'm saying, less than the sum of its parts, because bits like this are really good. He can't stop her, and they depart for Washington for the proper press conference, which is the bit I'm referring to. This was the bit just before that. We've got some more present day stuff. Will they? Won't they keep the link? Who cares? Because they will. Otherwise, the film won't happen. We're basically at the White House, and President Nixon is going to be presenting these Sentinels, which I don't fully understand, because they said no to the funding, and this is right after what's just happened in the Far East, so I'm a bit confused. But anyway, suddenly now it's all full speed ahead, and she's going to have another go at killing Bolivar Trask, possibly the president as well. I didn't pick up on that, but the thinking of the good guys is now, if she goes ahead with this, she's not going to stop anything. She's just going to accelerate us being thought of as a threat, and the Sentinel threat will continue to grow. They'll continue to be developed and so on, which is sound enough, but why they were never a threat during the original X-Men trilogy, I've no idea whatsoever. Because she did kill that day. She did kill Bolivar Trask that day in the 70s, even though we saw him in the year 2000.
Different timeline. No,
it's not at this stage. It's the same timeline until the end of this film.
I think they would. That's the problem. That's the problem. They've kind of muddied it a bit. So they kind of it kind of.
The timeline changes with their success at the end of this film. That resets the timeline, and actually wipes most of the original X-Men trilogy out in terms of how we experienced it. They obviously still met Logan. They still did all that, and Logan stayed and that. But the whole Dark Phoenix thing didn't happen, although it's going to happen again. But there you go.
Yeah,
That's the thing. They've wiped the slate clean in order to fuck it right up again. But at this stage, no, this shouldn't have happened. Bolivar Trask was not killed in 1973. We know that from the first film. But he wasn't a big character. He looked completely different, so it is possible for the audience to go, forget about it. It doesn't matter. And perhaps it is more comic book faithful. I don't know. So I don't really have a massive problem with it. The problem I've got with this now is I don't feel any tension, and I don't know why I don't feel any tension. You've got these machines firing. You've got this stadium being lifted. You've got them trying to find Mystique and stop a murder. And all of it is just like, I'm sure they'll be fine. I don't know why that is. I found it a lot more tense watching them on, that Cuban beach in the last film proper. And I don't know what else I've got to say about this now, really.
Yeah, I mean,
they all nearly die, but don't. Magneto ends up Wolverine ends up underwater, sort of pinned, but he is rescued and obviously will survive. We think
that's quite a tense scene, though. I think
it is, but I mean, he's rescued by, we think, William Stryker. So we think he's going off for the experimentation, which is not what we just saw. X-Men Origins Wolverine. That's not what happened. But all right, the timeline is actually just about to reset.
But it also makes Wolverine not do anything. Like he's basically just like a companion, really.
Yeah.
He's a companion to Charles, who's just like he's there to explain things. Really, that's it.
He's there for the marketability of this universe's Wolverine character. He's now captured by William Stryker. We find out at the end of the room, because she always has to flash her eyes yellow just to show everyone it's not really the guy she's been impersonating. And so he's obviously been taken by Mystique, which means he's safe. Well, in the next film, that wasn't the case. They couldn't keep him safe. Stryker would not have had the same obsession with Wolverine. That's not how he came into Wolverine's life and orbit. And even if this brings him in a different way, if Wolverine is rescued from Stryker, why is he the mutant he's now obsessed with forever? Particularly when you got Deadpool, who is healing as well. It doesn't really matter. The fact is, we end up with it all being stopped, which means we go. When he wakes up, Wolverine, he's not on this boat. He's in present day at the school. He's a history teacher there. Jean is still alive. Beast is working there. Scott Summers is still alive. And when he says the professor's alive and well and still running the school, and when he says to him, you've got a class to teach, he said history, and he said, well, I need a bit of help with that. Everything after 1973, he says, of course, what's the last thing you remember?
Wouldn't you just be fucked? I mean, can you imagine, like, hang on, so what's happened there? Because what I feel like you were like in a proper serious relationship. you were like, oh, actually, I have no idea who this person is.
Yeah, you don't know. They all know you, or they all know a version of you, but that's a version of you that was civilized a lot earlier than this version.
Yeah.
Because presumably he stayed with them after 1973 and has been working at the school for like 3 or 4 decades, if not longer. And also, if you say fill me in on everything from 1973, I don't think that's an afternoon's conversation.
No, that's going to be.
You might have the big points. You might have the big points. Oh well, we invaded Iraq in 1990, and then this happened. You know what I mean. You'd have the major points, but you wouldn't have the whole history of your life. I mean, he could. It'd
have to be like the oh god, SpongeBob SquarePants 1 week later.
And that's the X-Men films from now on, because next week we're going to move to the 1980s, go straight back to the original crew, crowbar Wolverine in a bit there that doesn't make sense, even though I quite like his sequence. The characters won't age correctly. They won't be acting in line with what we know of them. The following week, we're going to go into the 90s. In between those two things, we're going to see a Wolverine film that has him 6 years after the events of this film, 2029, I think it was. And everyone's dead, and he's got dementia, and Wolverine's losing his powers, and we've got a character, Stephen Merchant's character in it, who's not consistent with the timeline. It's a really good film, but from now on, they don't.
Stephen Merchant's brilliant.
Stephen Merchant's brilliant, actually. Yeah, he's great in it. I'm trying to think what his character's called now. I've forgotten.
I want to say something like Caliban. This was like
Yeah,
It is
Shakespearean
Caliban.
name,
It's Caliban.
It turns up in next week as actually as well.
but it
as
might
Cal-
not be.
But it doesn't make sense when he turns up next week in the ages and everything. But that's the universe from now on.
Yeah, it's a bit all over the place.
From sort of First Class onwards, really, the high points of this series are about individual moments with individual directors or individual writers surpassing the sort of standards of the studio, if you like, because the general corporate direction of this series is whatever every couple of years, and they value it because it makes them money. But I think this is emblematic of some of the series' problems. It's got things I like about it. I really do. In individual scenes, it's really good. In design, it's really good. In performances, it's outstanding. And that's not a given. I mean, even in Apocalypse, I seem to recall James McAvoy, who's always reliable, struggling with some of the crap dialogue he's given in some sequences. It's all quite strong here, but it's a patchwork of, like Chris said, fan service, all very abruptly thrown at us. Not sure who we're supposed to be caring about particularly. Shitting on continuity left, right, and centre. The pacing not really that great. Major things left unexplained. And an end film which I thought was better than some of what we're still about to get. Better than some of what we've already had, but a major letdown after X-Men First Class. And that's my final thoughts on it.
Becca, thoughts now we've talked sequentially.
Yes, I think for a film that's got quite a lot of sort of threads running through it, it does sort of struggle under the weight of some of them. And it does kind of like labour on some of them as well. It's just like struggling. But yeah, I was in some kind of visuals and effects and everything, it really does hold well. It's just
and that's not a given going forward either.
I think
Apocalypse has got some ropey effects.
There was one. Whenever I think of that, I don't know why. I need to find out where I've seen it, B, what it's called. But there's some kind of effect, I think, maybe used in the titles, in the credits. I'm not sure. I can't remember until I watch it next time. But it's like going into one of those like simulators, like in the 90s, where you have like a CGI kind of experience, I guess, or one of those kind of VR simulators.
The worst shot I remember from
and it's literally that bad. It's just like, oh my god.
Literally, the worst shot I remember from Apocalypse, apart from Apocalypse himself looking really like rubbery and shit, was that there was a shot of like a container, like a ship. You know, the ships that carry all the containers. That looked really CG. I think it was a bit like First Class. They rushed it.
Yeah, you can see like all the money's kind of on the screen, but you kind of think, well, there's kind of element that's like, quick, we've got to get as much of it on there as we can, and unfortunately it just doesn't look as polished as perhaps it should do. But we can go into the mechanics of it and why we ended up with the film that we did. But yeah, I think for me, certainly in terms of Days of Future Past, it does kind of struggle under the weight of its own ambition a little bit. I mean, as I say, visually, effects-wise, it looks beautiful, but there are some little bits of the timeline that perhaps don't tie up, but then it is one of those series where the timeline is all over the place. So yeah, kind of plot-wise, emotion-wise, it kind of doesn't live up to the hype, unfortunately. So yeah, I kind of a little bit left wanting, unfortunately, with this one. But still, it was a good watch. I still had a good time, still enjoyed it. It would just be kind of like middle to kind of.
We're damning with faint praise. None of us dislike it. It's just, remember,
it's okay. It's like
this
for
is
example,
the return of the X2 director. This is the direct sequel to X-Men First Class, which really reinvigorated the series.
Well, exactly. And you've got, as you say, we've got Bryan Singer as well, who really, he took the reins of this. This was his baby, essentially. And then, unfortunately, obviously,
it turns out
recent
he
times
gives
has all
less
kind
of
of
a
gone wrong
shit than
for him.
everyone else, because he'll shit on everything he set up this week, next week. But it's also the last full-length appearance in one of these films for Hugh Jackman until Logan. So what's
Logan's
in around this film just makes you go, it's not working as well here. But it doesn't mean it's bad. It's far better than X-Men 3. It is, from memory, better than Apocalypse. It's better than X-Men Origins Wolverine.
That's a lot of things better than Apocalypse.
It's better than Dark Phoenix. It is not a bad film. It's in and around the standard of the first X-Men film. But when you think of expectations for it, hype for
they were considerably higher.
And some of the feedback this film's got, I'm thinking, no, I'm not seeing it the way as some people are seeing it. Chris?
Yeah, kind of the same, really. I mean, I think the problems are generally it does embrace the fan service elements a bit too much. I mean, there is quality in here. You know, I can kind of see like the effects from First Class, and I can kind of almost see like there are some really good sequences, and like obviously the quality of the film itself is decent. I just end up not caring so much about this one. I don't know what it is.
We've tried to explain, but I don't think we've entirely been successful. Because it does sound like we're nitpicking it, but that's what it comes down to. We don't feel as strongly about the characters and story.
It's frustrating. It's frustrating.
I have a bunch of nitpicks, sure, but I think ultimately I just don't find the story that engaging.
Me neither, and I expected to.
Yeah, and I think that's probably what it is. I don't think the story is that great. There's not enough meat on the bones, other than like it's the end of the world, we have to do this kind of thing. Whereas like the stuff apart from like the assassinations and the lifting of stadiums, I mean, it does have Fassbender being cool. I mean, it still has a few things like that, but at the end of the day, I've just kind of zonked out of it. And I'll say was as bad as next week's film may be, at least it's not boring. At least it engaged me.
Yeah, fair enough. Would you be more engaged if you? Well, I'm assuming you're clueless, Chris, and it's only because I am. I don't know if you are as well. I was expecting to see like, well, I thought I was expecting to see Simon Cowell judging acts, and it was just a load of bollocks about some bloke in a wheelchair. So I don't think I've got the most out of this. What about you?
No, I mean, I think I probably need some extra knowledge.
Yeah, I think we should crack on with that because I know the person with all the knowledge, and she's here. She's here tonight, Chris.
Who is she?
Is she here to save us?
Yes, she is. Well, no, that's probably a bit much. I don't think 5 IMDb facts are going to save us. She's here to make our demise less painful. Becca.
I'll be coming down with you, so yes, barrel scraping.
Go
facts.
down a sinking ship.
Yes. Like oh god, kind hearts and coronets. Anyway, yes, random facts scraped from the barrel of the internet. Not kind of really a fun fact, but I thought it was quite interesting, seeing as it's a couple of years away. Original Days of Future Past comic mentioned Time Travel was set, I think, in 2013, and obviously when filming started on this film. But obviously this time it's kind of implied that the action takes place in 2023. So look at the skies. Fact number 2: Quicksilver's slow motion sequence was made usually mainly practical effects like high speed photography, with CGI being used for like the movement of the objects midair, which I didn't know. I kind of thought, it was all done CGI, and maybe he kind of moved around like on a rig in the suit or something. But no, it was mainly done practically, which I think makes it even more impressive. I don't know if I can say this, so I shall refer it by its other name. I'm not too sure. For any acting types who might be listening in. Sir Patrick Stewart, James McAvoy, Michael Fassbender, and Ian McKellen have all played the title role in the Scottish play on screen.
Scottish play, yes.
Yes, which I think is very cool. I think that's a really fun fact.
And watch Blackadder the Third for what you have to do when you accidentally say the name.
Oh my dear. I think the Ian McKellen version of that is. Oh, I wonder if I think it might be the Trevor Nunn, but I say if you can track it down, it's well worth a watch. I mean, that play is always worth watching. It's very hard going anyway. And the most recent
one of my favourite
version as well is absolutely fantastic to watch.
I can't wait for Hugh Jackman to take on Macbeth. Ah!
I am going to put a clip of it on our social media pages.
Oh, good. Okay.
Yes.
You can do like a sweary version.
Yeah. Okay.
Fun fact number 4. I can't remember if we mentioned this or not. I think you might have done it at the top of the show. Sorry about that. I wasn't paying attention. We see classic Star Trek in this film. Apparently the episode on show is The Naked Time, I think, is when the crew is sent back 70 hours in time. And then fun fact number 5, Rebecca Romijn was the only actor from the first 2 films not to reprise her role, as obviously J. Law plays Mystique.
Yeah, okay.
I shall come back next week with even more bowel scraping.
I keep mishearing it. I keep thinking you're saying bowel scraping. That sounds painful.
I have one of those, it's not nice.
Okay.
Not
Well,
really.
that's like a 6th fun fact.
Not really, of course. I don't think they even do that. Oh dear. But no, it's literally like the bottom of the barrel.
Okay, that's fun, folks. As for social,
Not really.
That's
facts,
bowel
not really
votes.
fun.
that's bowels, folks.
That saves you reading crappy facts off the Tinterweb. So yeah,
I wasn't
I
going to
saved you
read
5
about
minutes.
bowels. Okay.
Yeah, listen about that. the
Bowels,
best-
folks.
Anyway,
Owls, that'll be all right. As for social media, you can find me at the Pastor Kid 1976 on Twitter.
You can find all the old episodes, the ones that aren't missing on iTunes and on your whatever your podcast provider is, on the website cinematronix.co.uk. We're all on there.
and you can find us on Twitter at Expect Talk. Anyway, yeah, you can find us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Podbean, Podbay, and anywhere else you like to listen to us. Yeah, I think iTunes, there's a setting on there where you can increase the number of episodes that you have. There's another podcast that I listen to, and they've got in excess of about 350 episodes, but only a small amount are available. And it's just like, come on, and they're not on as many platforms. So I said, how about trying some of these? So yeah, you can catch us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Podbean, Podbay, and anywhere else you like to listen to us.
We really hope that the next time we record, we'll be saying we return with something very exciting. But in the interim, Becca.
I got Commodian sigh.
Well, I know, because we're coming up to the end of September, beginning of October 2021, and there will be no more delays. But anyway,
Unless a last-minute government decision happens, which...
So let's leave
But eventually
them
we
all.
will come back with something incredibly exciting
Let's
in a few
leave
weeks'
them all
time.
on a low.
I wonder what that could be. But in the meantime, do you expect to talk will return with X-Men Apocalypse. Insert Commodian sigh here. I literally got a Commodian sigh.
Good night, folks.
Good night, everybody.